Welcome, and Baruch Atah Adonai Eloheinu melech haolam asher kitshanu b'mitzvotav v'tzivanu la'asok b'divrei Torah.
Amen.
And so we're going to continue where we left off. We're still finishing up this genealogy that gave us the origins and the pedigree, you might say, of Moses and Aaron. And just to finish up with the sons of Levi, by the way, I noticed that while the Torah gives you the descendants of Yitzhar, it does not give, and Korach, let's go back here. Let me go back here. Um, it leaves out one particular, looking to see. Uh, yes. I'm trying to see. There's some people they leave out even amongst the sons of. Here we go. Yes, Chevron. We do not have Chevron's descendants, even though we have Yitzhar and um, and let's see. Yes, and Uziel. They leave out Chevron. Would have been one of I guess Moses' uncles. Just interesting. There's no commentary on it that at least that I came across right now. But now we're into the sons of Korach. Uh, Korach was a cousin of Moses. The children of the sons of Korach, Bnei Korach, Asir ve'Elkanah ve'Aviasaph, ele mishpachot haKorachi. So the names were Asir, Elkanah, Eviasaph, the families of Korach. What's interesting, by the way, if you're not aware of this, is that even though Korach himself died in the plague when he rebelled against Moses, when he mutinied against Moses in the wilderness, the sons of Korach did not go along with their father. And in fact,
Oh,
they're mentioned in the book of Psalms that there's some Psalms that are attributed to the sons of Korach.
oh.
Yeah, just a little detail there. I'm looking to see. All right, onwards with this. Um, Here we go. Ve'elazar ben Aharon, and Elazar the son of Aaron, lakach he took for himself mibnot Putiel, from the daughters of Putiel, lo leisha, as a wife, vateled lo, and she bore him Pinchas. Pinchas Ela Rashi Avot Halaviim Lemishchotam. These are the heads of the ancestral tribes, the chief, the paternal families of the Levites here according to their families.
Wasn't that one that Pinchas killed those two people trying to do a
Yes,
bad
in the
thing?
book of Numbers, correct,
Yeah, I
correct,
remember.
right. That's correct. So we have here we have some details regarding these people. So we have this strange expression putiel, and I believe it's the only time it occurs in the Torah. This name putiel, and it says mibnot putiel. Here's the Rashi on this. I'm going to make this a little larger. I hope that's helpful. And it says Mizera Yitro, from the seed of Jethro, Shepitem Agalim La'avodat Kochavim, because he fattened calves to serve idols. So, in other words, she was on her mother's side from the daughters of Jethro, Umizera Yosef, and from the seed of Joseph, Shepitpet Beyitzro, who conquered his impulse. So it's interesting that we don't consider this. There's some super commentary on Rashi that discusses the issue here of the fact that we don't consider Putiel to be a name, but but rather a derivation of individuals. And as I was looking into to understand this a little bit better, first of all, that it gives two interpretations, right? So one is on his mother's side, and one is, in other words, his wife's mother's side and his wife's father's side, as to the derivation, or possibly vice versa. At any rate, there's also the question of why benot, the daughters, and that's why it says from both sides. That's why it's not just one side. Onwards. Uh, Hu Aharon Moshe. So now the uh, the Torah is summing up what it had said up to this point, and the point of this all these genealogies. Hu Aharon Moshe. That is the Aaron and the Moses. Asher Amar Hashem lahem, to whom Hashem said, Hotziu et bnei Israel, bring out the children of Israel, me'eretz Mitzrayim, from the land of Egypt, al tzivotam, according to their ranks. The word tzava is understood as, sometimes it's translated as host. Host is an Old English word for army. So I would say according to their ranks. Let's see what Rashi says. Hu Aharon u'Moshe. Elu shehuskaru lamala. In other words, the Moses and Aaron that were mentioned above. Sheyaldai lochevet laAmram, who Yochevet bore to Amram, who Aharon u'Moshe. That is the Aaron and Moses, Asher Amar Hashem, to whom God said, and this is quoting from Shmot Rabbah, possibly Perik. It could be Perik Aleph, could be, or yeah, I think that's what it would mean, which would be a 91. Let's see, no, it's 81, 81, 81, chapter 81. That doesn't sound right to me. Or Perik Aleph would be chapter 1. Yesh mekomot, so he says now, Yesh mekomot shemakdim Aharon leMoshe. There are places in the Torah where Aaron's name precedes Moses. Veyesh mekomot shemakdim Moshe la'Aharon. But there are other places where the name Moses precedes the name Aaron. Lomar, to tell you, sheshkulim ke'echad, that they are of equal value. So notice here, Aharon precedes Moses. Often we come across Moses prior to Aaron, but it's saying they're of equal importance. They're considered of equal importance. Even though we know that Moses had a unique a level of divine prophecy, but nevertheless, in terms of human beings, their value as human beings, they're considered identical. Al tzivotam. Yeah, go ahead,
Rabbi,
please. Yes.
it's the same as Abraham, Isaac, and Jacob. Sometimes it's reversed, but they're of
Right. Right.
equal thing. They're all
That's
equal.
good. Yeah, yeah. I think that's a good inference as far as I can tell, Harlan. That would be right. That one is not more important than the other is really what it's trying to say. Al Tzivatam, according to their ranks, but Tzivotam, again, just reading the same word, right? So what he's commenting now is the word al, okay? Right? So he's saying here, al Tzivotam means betzivatam, through their ranks. Whereas the word al we know very often means on, but here it means according to their ranks. Kol sav'am. So in other words, it's saying all of their ranks, lishivtehem, by their tribes. In other words, they were organized. They weren't just a mass, but they were in an organized kind of way, according to their tribes, their ranks. And I footnoted here, right? Because I wasn't sure exactly the point that Rashi was making, and then when I finally understood the point that he was making, then I wrote it down here just as a remembrance, right? Rashi is commenting here that there are times when the word al comes to replace a single letter. That's what he's saying here. Yesh al she'eno ela b'makom ot achat. This is the point he's making. There are times, see, there are no quotation marks in Hebrew here. So you have to understand that he means here the word al. There are times when the word al only comes to replace one letter. So here we go. He gives examples. Al chorbacha techyeh, by your sword you shall live. Literally, of course, it means on your sword you shall live, but it means bechorbacha. It means by your sword. And then Yecheskel Lamed Gimel. So in Ezekiel chapter 33, Amadatim al Horbachem. So it says, you stood by your swords, kamo becharbechem, through your swords. Onwards. So a little bit of grammar there. Uh, who I'm sorry, I want to make sure I've got the correct verse here. So here we go. Haim hamidabrim el paro. They spoke. They were the ones who spoke. Hamidabrim would make a noun out of it. In other words, the ones who spoke. They were the ones who spoke to Pharaoh, Melech Mitzrayim, king of Egypt, Lehotzi, to bring out Bnei Israel Mitzrayim, to bring out the children of Israel from Egypt, Hu Moshe v'Aharon, that same Moses and Aaron.
Well, what about the elders? Weren't they supposed to help out Aaron and I mean, the elders are usually like judges.
So at this particular point, we aren't talking about the organization of the camp. We're just talking about the people who had to go speak to Pharaoh. That's what the Torah is telling us. In other words, they didn't go with the elders to speak to Pharaoh. It was only Moses and Aaron who went and spoke to him. And that's the
Oh,
point they're trying to make. And again, God didn't command the elders at this particular point. It's only later on where Moses needs the support and the help. And it's not that they perhaps didn't even exist at that time. They may not have had the formal position that they had later on when Moses seeks help or is instructed to divide and organize the camp in such a way that there can be a decent process of justice. So we're just talking about Moses and Aaron here. Haim hamidabrim, they're the ones who spoke, etc. Haim shenitztavu, they're the ones, in other words, Moses and Aaron, the ones who were commanded. Haim shekimu, and they were the ones who fulfilled that command. That's Rashi. Okay, so what he's explaining is the repetition of Moshe Aaron, right? We have Moses and Aaron, and at the beginning of the verse we do also have it, right here. Moshe, hu Moshe Aaron uMoshe, right? So here it says hu Aaron uMoshe. That's the same Moses, Aaron and Moses, and here it says hu Moshe Aaron, and here it says Moses. Here it's the same Moses and Aaron. Here we go. Hu Moshe Aaron. Hem beshlichutam uvetzidkatam mitchila va'ad sof. So Rashi's saying the fact that it's repeated here is they remained under the orders of their mission. They remained true to their mission. Uvetzidkatam, their righteousness, mitchila va'ad sof, from beginning to end. They were loyal in making sure that they fulfilled their mission. So, okay. And here we go. Sorry. Onwards with this. Vayhi bayom diber Hashem el Moshe be'eretz Mitzrayim. So this looks like a sentence, right? And it was on the day that that Hashem spoke to Moses and Aaron in the land of Egypt. And it doesn't feel like a complete sentence, even though it's marked actually at the end of the Aliyah. And Rashi's going to tell us that it actually belongs to the next sentence. And the history of breaking these sentences, these verses and chapters, I may have mentioned to you, is actually something that was done by Christians, by the early Christians, and for whatever the reason was, we absorbed that and accepted that essential in our printed editions or possibly even manuscripts, this idea of the chapters and the verses. So it's not something that actually was produced. The rabbis weren't the ones necessarily who did that. However, the thing that I would have to say is that there is a sof pasuk here, right? So and of course the ta'amim, the ta'amei mikra were developed by the Masoretes. That would be after the advent of Christianity. I mean, my history is not really deep here in terms of this particular development, but it certainly looks as if, I mean, and we're making it the end of the parsha as well, but we're going to see what it says here. Vayi biyom diber, right? Let's make sure I'm saying it correctly. Uh, yeah, vayom biyom diber. It was on the day that Hashem spoke. Mechubar lemikra shelacharav. So Rashi just very simply says this belongs to the next sentence, which, of course, or the scriptural verse, which raises a bunch of questions, right, that we're raising. So if that's the case, why would it come at the end, in the same way? Why would it end the part the part the excuse me, the aliyah, uh, unless it's trying to give us some suspense, to build suspense. That's about the only reason I can think of offhand. Again, I haven't come across commentary to talk about it. Vaydaber Hashem el Moshe lemor. And Hashem spoke to Moses, saying, Ani Hashem, I am Hashem. Daber el Paro melech Mitzrayim. Speak to Pharaoh, king of Egypt. Et kol asher ani dover elecha. Everything that I say to you. So it really is a continuation of this sentence. So, Vayhi b'yom diber Hashem el Moshe be'eretz Mitzrayim, Vaydaber Hashem el Moshe lemor. So in other words, on the day that Hashem spoke to Moses in the land of Egypt, Hashem said to Moses, etc., etc. So that's how we need to understand the sentence, the way Rashi's parsing it. Let's go on with this. Vaydaber Hashem. Hu hadibur atzmor. So here now we're about to state what actually God said to him. Ha'amur lamala, which was said above. Bo daber el paro. So this is what earlier on, before we broke into that genealogy, that's where we were leaving things, and God says, Bo daber el paro, come speak to Pharaoh, melech Mitzrayim, king of Egypt, and etc., etc. Ela mitoch shehifstik ha'inyan. But Rashi's saying, but because he interrupted the flow of this particular topic, kedei liyachsam, in order to give you their pedigree, chazar ha'inyan alav lahatchil bo. So he goes back. That's why he goes back to repeat where he left off before. Okay, so just to clarify that this is a continuation of what was stated above. Ani Hashem, I am Hashem. So when we see these statements, I am the Lord, I am Hashem, we see it as a strengthening, a vetting, so to speak, that God is, it's like a signature or a seal that God is saying, I'm going to stand by this. So Kidai Ani, I have the power. I have the authority. I'm worthy. L'shalechacha, to let me say, yeah. Hmm. I'm trying to think of yeah, to send you. I have the authority to send you, ulukayem divrei shlichutai, but not just to send you, but for me to fulfill the words of my mission, of the mission I'm sending you on. So I have the power to do it. Let's go on here. Okay. Vayomer Moshe lifnei Hashem. So this is again referring back to what happened before. Vayomer Moshe lifnei Hashem, and Moses said before Hashem, Hein, indeed, ani aral sfatayim, I am of uncircumcised lips. Ve'ech yishma elai paro. How is it possible that Pharaoh is going to listen to me? Now, if you go back and look at that earlier passage, you see that he says, that the Israelites aren't going to listen to him or aren't listening to him. And how is it possible that Pharaoh is going to listen to him? Which, of course, is an argument, right? It's a logical argument. So because Moses doubts, excuse me, this is before it actually happens, because initially the Israelites do pay attention and do listen to him, and it's only subsequently when Pharaoh makes their lives more, embitters their lives further, that they don't. So here he's casting doubt on whether he'll be successful. So this is just pulling it up. It doesn't mention anything about the Israelites here, and there's some commentary as to whether or not it's simply to be understood. Let's see, here we go. 30. Right. Vayomer Moshe lifnei Hashem. And Moses said before Hashem, Hi ha'amira she'amar lamala. This is referring to the statement he made above. Hein, and this is the quote, right? Hein b'nei Yisrael lo sham'u elai. He says this, the children of Israel did not, this is, at least this is what it seems to say. I may have to go back and look at the context, okay? Did not listen to me. Vishina hakatuv kan, and Rashi saying, and here the statement is a little bit different, is what he's saying. Kevan shehifsik ha'inyan, since he interrupted the flow of the narrative. V'kach hashita, he says, this is typical, this is the way in which people speak, ka'adam ha'omer nachzor al harishonot. In other words, like someone who says, okay, let's go back to what we were talking about before. And possibly what Rashi is simply saying here is that when you make a reference going back to what you originally were talking about, you don't necessarily mention every single detail of what you were talking about before, but you give a key, a key phrase to let you know, to reconnect you to that previous context.
Rabbi,
Yes.
it doesn't comment on the phrase circumcised lips,
Right.
but I don't get it.
Oh, so it could mean several things. I mean, basically, we have these midrashim that talk about how Moses was slow of speech. In other words, that he wasn't a good speech maker. That he didn't feel confident that he could speak to Pharaoh, with authority and clarity and
That I get. I
yeah,
just
yeah.
don't get that phrase
Well,
and
you
how
know,
that.
right. So it could have to do, I mean, I'm guessing now based on your question that we know that circumcision completes a person, at least from an Israelite, from a Jewish perspective. We are given the task of making sure that we enter the covenant, and we're tasked with performing this minor surgery that, in a sense, and God says to Abraham, walk before me and become perfect. So understanding to perfect as a verb, that he's saying that somehow he's not prepared. He's not sufficiently in a place to be able to speak to Pharaoh.
But he is circumcised elsewhere, right?
Yes, he is. He's using circumcised here in a metaphoric sense, in terms of that the idea of circumcision here is a purification.
There's a definition that it just means covered. In other words, aral is covered. So if you,
Go ahead.
sorry, so I mean, the image is just something that's covered, and like if a mouth is covered, you can't really hear it clearly.
And here it says closed, but those words covered and closed might be euphemistic. I mean, I can't imagine that if it's really means circumcised, that it also means covered or closed.
Right. So it means uncircumcised. In other words, yeah.
Oh, I see what you're saying.
Right. So that would mean
Could
that.
be covered or closed. Yeah.
Right.
Covered.
Absolutely.
Okay.
Absolutely.
I get you.
So again, they're just using it in a metaphoric sense.
Yeah.
Yeah. So yeah, it's interesting because the word arail, I'm not sure that I don't know. Shira Beth, have you seen it in any other context to mean covered or closed? I just don't. I mean, my
No,
knowledge
I
is
mean,
not sufficient.
This dictionary I have that goes back to the Akkadian,
Yes.
for example,
Okay.
in the Arabic. He gives the Akkadian word that's related to it as meaning foreskin. So in that sense, it's something very specific.
Right. Right. And that's usually the context in which it's used, which is why they translated it as uncircumcised. Yeah. Yeah. Interesting. Oh well. Here goes. There's a lot of significance, of course, to the whole idea of circumcision, of male circumcision. At any rate, going on here, let me see. We did this. Okay, so we're on to the new chapter. Oh, and it's 8 o'clock, so perfect place to put this. Let's see if I can put
There
in
is one other thing here in this dictionary that it relates orla, the word for
Yes.
foreskin. Orla is related to the fruit of the first 3 years.
Right, I was just thinking of that too. Right, it's so funny, Shira Beth. It was you were reading my mind. Right, that's
Well,
yes.
arel, they say arel, it could mean either uncircumcised or unpruned, like a tree that hasn't been pruned yet.
Interesting. Okay. Yeah, I mean, but essentially, again, we're talking about preparation. In other words, this was this was what I was saying in terms of explaining when Lauren asked her question. So we're going to stop our recording here and, God willing, continue. Let's see.